In 1992, a 7-year-old girl named Samantha Rivers vanished from her locked bedroom in the quiet town of Cedar Falls, Oregon, leaving behind only an unmade bed and a family shattered by an impossible disappearance. But 9 years later, her mother would discover something hidden inside her daughter's favorite toy that would change everything they thought they knew about that terrible night. Catherine Rivers sat in the dim light of her kitchen on a cold November morning in 2001, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The ceramic mug bore the faded image of a cartoon princess, a relic from happier times when her daughter Samantha would insist on using the matching set during their weekend breakfast rituals. Outside, the Oregon rain drummed against the windows, with the same relentless rhythm that had marked so many sleepless nights over the past 9 years. Catherine's eyes, once bright with maternal warmth, now carried the hollow weight of endless searching, countless dead ends, and the kind of grief that settles deep into your bones and never truly leaves. The house around her felt impossibly large and quiet. Robert had left for work an hour ago, kissing her forehead in the same gentle way he had every morning since their world collapsed. They rarely spoke about Sam anymore, not because they had forgotten, but because some wounds are too deep for words. The silence had become their shared language of loss. Catherine's gaze drifted to the refrigerator, where a collection of faded photographs still clung to the white surface with colorful magnets. Sam's school picture from first grade smiled back at her, gap-toothed and radiant, her dark curls framing a face full of mischief and joy. 7 years old forever, frozen in time while the world continued to spin around her absence. The morning routine had become mechanical over the years. Coffee, silence, the pretense of normalcy. But today felt different somehow, charged with an energy Catherine couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was the approaching anniversary of Sam's disappearance, or maybe it was the restless night she'd spent dreaming of her daughter's laughter echoing through empty hallways. She set down the mug and walked slowly down the hallway toward what had once been Sam's bedroom. The door stood slightly ajar, the way it always did now. In the early years, Catherine had kept it locked, unable to bear the sight of the untouched space. But time had worn down even her fiercest protective instincts, and eventually the room had become a shrine, a place where she could still feel close to her daughter. The morning light filtering through Sam's bedroom window cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. Everything remained exactly as it had been that October night in 1992, when Catherine had kissed her daughter goodnight and tucked her into bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit. The same rainbow-colored comforter, the same collection of books, stacked on the nightstand, the same purple backpack hanging from the chair where Sam had dropped it after school. Only Sam was gone. Catherine stepped into the room and breathed in deeply, as if she might still catch a trace of her daughter's presence. In the air, the police had searched every inch of this space, dusted for fingerprints, analyzed the locked window, questioned the impossible logistics of a child vanishing from a secured room on the second floor of their home. But after 9 years, the official investigation had grown cold, filed away in some distant cabinet while life moved on for everyone except the family left behind. As Catherine straightened the already perfect bed sheets, her eyes fell on the collection of toys still arranged on the shelves exactly as Sam had left them. There was the wooden puzzle box Sam had received for her 7th birthday, the set of crayons worn down to colorful stubs, and there, sitting in its place of honor on the top shelf, was Patches the rabbit. Patches had been Sam's constant companion since she was 3 years old. The stuffed animal had traveled everywhere with them, from family vacations to sleepovers at Grandma's house. Its once vibrant purple fur had faded to a soft lavender, and one ear hung slightly askew from countless nights of being clutched close. During bedtime stories, Catherine reached for the rabbit, holding it against her chest the way Sam used to do. The fabric felt soft and familiar, carrying with it 1,000 memories of bedtime rituals and whispered secrets. But as she held Patches closer, something felt different. wrong, somehow. There was a slight weight inside the rabbit that hadn't been there before, a small, hard object that seemed to shift when she moved the toy. Catherine's heart began to race as her fingers explored the seam along Patch's back, discovering a small opening that had been carefully stitched closed with thread that didn't quite match the original purple fabric. Someone had opened Patch's. Someone had hidden something inside. With trembling hands, Catherine made her way to Sam's desk and found a small pair of scissors in the pencil holder. The same scissors her daughter had used for school art projects. The metal felt cold against her fingers as she carefully cut the mismatched thread, her breath catching in her throat as the opening revealed a small dark space inside the stuffed animal. Reaching inside, Catherine's fingers closed around a small, rectangular object. She pulled it out and stared in shock at what she held in her palm. It was a miniature cassette tape, the kind used in old-fashioned answering machines, its surface scratched and worn but still intact after 9 years hidden inside her daughter's most beloved toy. The discovery sent a chill through Catherine's entire body. Who had put this tape inside Patch's? When? And most terrifyingly of all, what secrets might it contain about the night her daughter disappeared? As she sat there in Sam's childhood bedroom, holding a piece of evidence that could change everything, Catherine Rivers realized that the story she thought she knew about her daughter's disappearance was about to be rewritten. The truth, it seemed, had been waiting patiently all these years, hidden in the last place anyone would think to look. The hunt for answers was about to begin again. Catherine's hands shook as she stared at the tiny cassette tape, its black surface, reflecting the morning light streaming through Sam's bedroom window. The plastic casing was slightly cracked along one edge, and she could see the thin brown tape wound inside, holding what could be the key to 9 years of agonizing questions. She needed to hear what was on this tape, but first she had to find something that could play it. The miniature cassette was smaller than a standard tape, designed for answering machines and small recording devices that had been common in the early 90s. Catherine remembered Robert throwing away their old answering machine just 2 years ago, replacing it with a digital system that seemed impossibly modern at the time. Rising from Sam's bed, Catherine walked quickly to the hallway closet where they kept boxes of old electronics and household items they couldn't quite bring themselves to discard. Her fingers traced over dusty cardboard boxes until she found the one labeled Electronics, MISC, in Robert's careful handwriting. Inside, beneath tangled cables and obsolete computer accessories, she found their old portable tape recorder. It was a small gray device they had used for recording family messages and Sam's early attempts at singing her favorite songs. Catherine's throat tightened as she remembered how Sam would spend hours recording herself telling stories, making up elaborate adventures featuring her stuffed animals. The tape recorder felt heavier than she remembered as she carried it back to Sam's room. Her fingers fumbled with the battery compartment, and she realized the device would need fresh batteries. The closest ones were in the kitchen junk drawer, but as she stood to leave Sam's room, a wave of panic washed over her. What if she was imagining this? What if the tape was blank, or contained nothing more than the innocent recordings of a 7-year-old child? But what if it contained something else entirely? Catherine forced herself to walk calmly to the kitchen, though every instinct screamed at her to run. She found 4 AA batteries in the drawer and tested them quickly in a small flashlight to make sure they worked. Back in Sam's room, she installed the batteries with the methodical precision of someone trying to maintain control in an uncontrollable situation. The recorder's red power light blinked to life when she pressed the switch. Catherine inserted the tiny cassette, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain the whole neighborhood could hear it. For a moment she hesitated. Once she pressed play, there would be no going back. Whatever was on this tape had been deliberately hidden, and instinct told her it wasn't going to be pleasant. She pressed the play button. Static filled the room for several seconds, followed by the mechanical whir of the tape mechanism. Then, cutting through the white noise, came a voice. Not Sam's sweet, familiar voice, but a man's voice, speaking in low, urgent whispers. "Day 7, the voice said, and Catherine's blood ran cold. "The kid's been asking for her mother again. Crying. Most of the night. Boss says we need to move her soon. Maybe tonight. Can't risk keeping her here much longer." Catherine's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor of Sam's bedroom, the tape recorder clutched against her chest. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be real. But the voice continued, methodical and chilling in its casual discussion of her daughter's captivity. "She keeps asking about that rabbit. Keeps saying she can't sleep without patches. Tommy thinks we should have grabbed it when we took her, but the boss said no extra evidence. Kid's gonna have to learn to sleep without it." The tape crackled, with more static, and Catherine realized she was holding her breath. When the voice resumed, it was fainter, as if the person recording had moved away from the microphone. This was supposed to be easy money. In and out, grab the kid, collect the payment. But she's not like the others. She remembers everything. "Too smart for her own good. Boss is getting nervous." Catherine's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the recorder. The others. There had been other children. And Sam, her brilliant, observant daughter, had been too much of a risk for whoever had taken her. The recording continued for several more minutes, detailing movements, plans, and casual discussions about her daughter's well-being as if Sam were nothing more than cargo to be transported. When the tape finally ended, Catherine sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. Someone had kidnapped her daughter, and for reasons she couldn't yet understand, they had hidden this evidence inside patches, right here in Sam's room. The question now was, who had access to put it there? Catherine sat frozen on Sam's bedroom floor for what felt like hours, the tape recorder silent beside her. The afternoon light had shifted, casting different shadows across the room, but she couldn't bring herself to move. The man's voice echoed. In her mind, each word carving deeper into her understanding of what had happened to her daughter. Collect the payment. Those 3 words haunted her most of all. Someone had paid to have Sam taken. This wasn't a random kidnapping or a crime. Of opportunity. Someone had specifically targeted her 7-year-old daughter, had planned her disappearance, had orchestrated the nightmare that destroyed their family. But who? And why Sam? The sound of Robert's car in the driveway jolted Catherine back to the present. She could hear the familiar slam of his door, the jingle of keys, his heavy footsteps on the front porch. In a matter of seconds, he would walk through that door expecting to find his wife going through the motions of another ordinary day. How could she possibly explain what she had discovered? Catherine quickly gathered the tape recorder and the cassette, wrapping them carefully in one of Sam's old blankets. She needed time to think, to process what she had heard before involving anyone else. Even Robert, especially Robert. The thought surprised her with its intensity. Why would she hesitate to tell her husband about finding evidence of their daughters? Kidnapping? But something deep in her gut whispered a warning she couldn't quite articulate. 9 years was a long time. Long enough for people to change, for secrets to fester, for trust to erode in ways you don't recognize until it's too late. "Catherine?" Robert's voice called from downstairs. "I'm home." She stood quickly, smoothing her clothes and running her hands through her hair. "I'll be right down," she called back, her voice sounding surprisingly normal to her own ears. Catherine tucked the wrapped tape recorder under Sam's bed, behind a box of old school papers where Robert would never think to look. Then she took a deep breath and walked downstairs to face her husband. Robert stood in the kitchen, loosening his tie after another long day at the insurance office. He looked older than his 43 years, the stress of grief having carved permanent lines around his eyes and mouth. But he smiled when he saw her, the same gentle smile that had won her heart 15 years ago. "How was your day?" he asked, the question they asked each other every evening, though neither really wanted to hear the answer anymore. "Quiet," Catherine replied, which was true in its own way. She busied herself at the stove, reheating leftover soup for dinner. How about you? Robert shrugged, hanging his jacket on the back of a chair. Same as always. Mrs. Henderson called. About her claim again. The Thompson file is still missing. Nothing exciting. He moved to the refrigerator and paused, his eyes lingering on Sam's school photo. Catherine watched him carefully, searching for any flicker of guilt or recognition, any sign that he might know more about their daughter's disappearance than he had ever admitted. But Robert's face showed only the familiar pain of a grieving father. He touched the photo gently with one finger, the way he did almost every evening, and Catherine felt ashamed for suspecting him even for a moment. I was thinking, Robert said, turning back to her, maybe we should finally consider moving, starting fresh somewhere else. It's been 9 years, Catherine. Maybe it's time. The suggestion hit Catherine like a physical blow. Leave? Leave the house where Sam had taken her first steps, where they had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where her daughter's presence still lingered in every corner. Leave the place where Sam might one day return? We can't, Catherine said, her voice sharper than she intended. What if she comes back? What if she tries to find us? Robert's expression softened with the patient sadness she had grown to hate. Sweetheart, you know the chances of that are— No, Catherine interrupted. I don't want to hear about chances or statistics. She's our daughter, Robert. She's still our daughter. Robert nodded slowly, though Catherine could see the resignation in his eyes. They had had this conversation many times over the years, and it always ended the same way, with silence and separate grief. As they ate dinner in the quiet kitchen, Catherine found herself studying her husband's face, searching for clues she had missed over the past 9 years. The tape had changed everything. Someone close to them had access to Sam's room. Someone who could come and go without suspicion. Someone who might still be watching them. The thought sent a chill down Catherine's spine that had nothing to do with the Oregon rain beginning to fall outside their windows. That night, Catherine lay awake listening to Robert's steady breathing beside her. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind through the trees outside, made her heart race. The tape recorder remained hidden under Sam's bed, its secrets burning in her mind like a fever she couldn't shake. By morning, Catherine knew she had to tell someone about the recording. But not Robert. Not yet. She needed to understand more about what she had discovered before trusting anyone, even her own husband. As Robert left for work with his usual kiss goodbye, Catherine waited until his car disappeared around the corner before making her decision. She retrieved the tape recorder from Sam's room and placed it carefully in her purse, along with the tiny cassette that had changed everything. The Cedar Falls police station sat on Main Street, a modest brick building that had served the small community for over 50 years. Catherine had been here countless times in the months following Sam's disappearance, begging for updates, demanding action, pleading for someone to care as much as she did about finding her daughter. The desk sergeant, a woman Catherine didn't recognize, looked up with professional courtesy as she approached. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with Detective Martinez," Catherine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "About the Samantha Rivers case." The sergeant's expression shifted slightly. Everyone in Cedar Falls knew about the Rivers case, the little girl who had vanished without a trace from her own bedroom. "Detective Martinez retired 3 years ago," the woman said gently. "But Detective Williams has taken over his old cases. Would you like to speak with her?" Catherine nodded, though her heart sank. Detective Martinez had been the one constant. Through those terrible early months, the only person who seemed to truly believe that Sam could still be found alive. Starting over with someone new felt like yet another betrayal of her daughter's memory. Detective Williams turned out to be a woman in her early 40s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She led Catherine to a small interview room and offered coffee, which Catherine declined with shaking hands. "Mrs. Rivers," Detective Williams said, settling into her chair with a thick file folder. "I've reviewed your daughter's case extensively. I know how difficult this has been for your family. What can I do for you today?" Catherine pulled the tape recorder from her purse and set it on the table between them. I found this hidden inside my daughter's stuffed animal yesterday morning. There's a recording on it that I think you need to hear. Detective Williams leaned forward, her professional demeanor sharpening with interest. Hidden how? Someone had cut open the seam and sewn it back up with different thread, Catherine explained. The tape was inside Patch's Sam's rabbit, the one she slept with every night. Without another word, Catherine pressed play. The detective's expression grew darker with each whispered word from the recording. When the tape ended, Detective Williams sat back in her chair, processing what she had just heard. "Mrs. Rivers, this changes everything," she said quietly. "This suggests your daughter was taken by an organized group. The references to payment, to other children, to moving her quickly. This isn't the work of an opportunistic predator." Catherine felt a mixture of validation and terror. "I know, but Detective, whoever put this tape in Patches had to have access to our house, to Sam's room, after she disappeared." Detective Williams nodded slowly. "We'll need to test this for fingerprints, analyze the voice, see if we can identify any background sounds that might give us a location. But Mrs. Rivers, I have to ask, who has had access to your home over the past 9 years? Catherine stared at Detective Williams across the small table, the weight of the question settling heavily between them. Who had access to their home? The list was longer than she wanted to admit, and each name that came to mind felt like a betrayal of trust she had built over 9 years of grief. "My husband Robert, of course," Catherine began reluctantly. "My sister Helen visits regularly. She has a key for emergencies. Our neighbor, Mr. Peterson, waters our plants when we're away. He's had a spare key for years." Detective Williams took careful notes, her pen scratching across the paper with mechanical precision. "Anyone else? Repair people, cleaning services, relatives?" Catherine closed her eyes, forcing herself to remember. "Robert's brother Danny comes by occasionally, usually for holidays or when he needs money. The heating repairman, Joe Brennan, he's been to the house several times over the years, always seemed trustworthy." She paused, her throat tightening. "And Father Michael from St. Mary's. He visited regularly after Sam disappeared, trying to help us through our grief." "I'll need full names and contact information for all of them," Detective Williams said. "Mrs. Rivers, I know this is difficult, but we need to consider the timing. When do you think this tape was placed in the stuffed animal?" Catherine had been dreading this question. "It could have been any time. I don't handle Patches very often. Anymore. Too painful. The last time I really held him close was probably 2 years ago, during the anniversary of Sam's disappearance. I would have noticed the weight then. So sometime in the past 2 years," the detective mused. "That narrows our time frame considerably. Mrs. Rivers, is there anyone who's been asking questions about the case recently? Anyone showing unusual interest in your family or your home?" A memory surfaced that made Catherine's stomach clench. "Mr. Peterson mentioned something strange about 3 months ago. He said he saw someone in our backyard late one evening, but when he looked again, they were gone. I thought he was just being paranoid. He's elderly, and his eyesight isn't what it used to be." Detective Williams looked up sharply. "Did he describe this person? Male, female, height, clothing?" "He said it looked like a man, average height, wearing dark clothes, but he couldn't be sure. It was around 10 at night, and our motion sensor light was burned out at the time." Catherine felt sick as she realized how many warning signs she had dismissed. "Robert replaced the bulb the next day." The detective made more notes, then leaned back in her chair. "Mrs. Rivers, I need to ask something that might be difficult to hear. Have you noticed any changes in your husband's behavior recently? Anything unusual or out of character?" The question Catherine had been dreading hung in the air between them. She thought about Robert's suggestion that they move, his increasing distance over the past year, the way he sometimes stayed late at work without clear explanations. He's been talking about moving, Catherine said quietly, more frequently than usual. And he's been working longer hours. Says it's busy season at the insurance office, but she trailed off, unable to voice her growing suspicions. But? Detective Williams prompted gently. But I called his office last week when he was 3 hours late coming home. His secretary said he had left at his normal time. When I asked him about it, he said he had stopped for drinks with a client, but he couldn't remember the client's name. Detective Williams nodded grimly. Mrs. Rivers, I'm going to be direct with you. In cases like this, where evidence is planted, in the victim's home, we often find that someone close to the family is involved. I'm not saying your husband is guilty of anything, but we need to investigate everyone with access. Catherine felt her world tilting again, the fragile stability she had built over 9 years crumbling like sand. What do I do? How do I go home? And look at him and pretend everything is normal? You don't, the detective said firmly. You stay alert. You trust your instincts, and you call me immediately if anything feels wrong. We're going to solve this case, Mrs. Rivers. After 9 years, your daughter deserves justice. As Catherine left the police station, she realized that finding the tape had been just the beginning. The real investigation was about to start, and everyone she trusted was now a suspect. Catherine drove home from the police station in a daze, Detective Williams' words echoing in her mind. Everyone with access to their home was now a suspect in her daughter's disappearance. The familiar streets of Cedar Falls looked different somehow, as if she were seeing them through the eyes of a stranger. She pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, gathering her courage. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but everything had changed. Somewhere in this quiet neighborhood, someone was hiding a terrible secret about what had happened to Sam. As she walked toward her front door, Catherine noticed Mr. Peterson working in his garden next door. The elderly man looked up and waved, his weathered face breaking into the same friendly smile she had known for over a decade. Could this kind old man really be involved in her daughter's kidnapping? Beautiful afternoon, isn't it, Catherine? Mr. Peterson called out, wiping soil from his hands with a faded handkerchief. Finally getting these fall flowers planted before the frost hits, Catherine forced a smile. They look lovely, Mr. Peterson. She paused, remembering Detective Williams' advice to stay alert. You mentioned seeing someone in our backyard a few months ago. I was wondering if you remembered any other details about that night. Mr. Peterson straightened slowly, his expression growing thoughtful. Oh, that. Yes, it was quite strange. I was having trouble sleeping, you know how it is at my age, and I happened to look out my bedroom window. There was definitely someone moving around back there, near Sam's window. Catherine's blood chilled. Near Sam's window specifically? Well, yes. They had some kind of small flashlight, just a pinpoint of light, really. At first I thought maybe Robert was checking something outside, but then I realized his car wasn't in the driveway. You two had gone to visit your sister that weekend, remember? The memory hit Catherine like a physical blow. The weekend they had visited Helen in Portland. They had been gone for 2 full days, and Mr. Peterson had promised to keep an eye on the house. That would have given someone plenty of time to break in, access Sam's room, and hide the tape inside Patches. Did you call the police? Catherine asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mr. Peterson shook his head, looking embarrassed. I should have, I know. But by the time I got my glasses on and looked again, they were gone. I convinced myself I had imagined it. These old eyes aren't what they used to be. Catherine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Mr. Peterson, this is important. Did the person look familiar at all? Could it have been someone from the neighborhood? The old man considered this carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. You know, there was something about the way they moved. Not rushed or panicked like you'd expect from a burglar. More deliberate, like they knew exactly where they were going. Like they had been there before? Exactly. Mr. Peterson's eyes widened as the implication hit him. Oh my goodness, Catherine. Do you think this is connected to Sam's disappearance? "Should I call the police?" Catherine nodded, her mind racing. "Yes, please do. Ask for Detective Williams and tell her everything you just told me. Even the smallest detail might be important." As she finally entered her house, Catherine realized that the weekend in Portland had been Robert's idea. He had suggested the visit, insisted they needed time away to heal, practically forced her to leave the house for the first time since Sam's disappearance. She walked slowly to the kitchen and stood looking at the refrigerator, at Sam's smiling face in the school photo. Had Robert orchestrated their trip away so that someone could plant the evidence? Or was she becoming paranoid, seeing guilt where only grief existed? The sound of a car in the driveway made her jump. Robert was home early again, and Catherine realized she was completely unprepared to face him with these new suspicions burning in her mind. She heard his key in the lock, his familiar call of, "I'm home," and felt her heart begin to race. How do you look at the man you've loved for 15 years and wonder if he's been lying to you about the most devastating event of your life? The kitchen door opened, and Robert walked in, his tie already loosened, his smile warm and genuine. "You're home early," Catherine managed to say. "Thought I'd surprise you," Robert replied, moving to kiss her cheek. "Maybe we could go out to dinner tonight. Just the two of us." As his lips touched her skin, Catherine wondered if this was the face of evil, hidden behind 15 years of shared love and loss. The restaurant Robert chose was Giuseppe's, the same Italian place where they had celebrated their anniversary every year before Sam disappeared. Catherine sat across from her husband in the dimly lit booth, studying his face as he perused the wine list with casual familiarity. Everything about this evening felt orchestrated, from his early arrival home to the romantic setting he had selected. "You seem tense tonight," Robert said, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his. "Is everything okay?" Catherine forced herself not to pull away from his touch. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Robert nodded sympathetically, but Catherine caught something in his eyes, a flicker of calculation that made her stomach turn. "You know, I've been thinking more about what we discussed, about moving away from Cedar Falls, starting fresh." "Robert, we've talked about this." I know, but hear me out." Robert leaned forward, his voice taking on the persuasive tone she remembered from their early dating years. "I found a listing today. A beautiful house in Seattle. 3 bedrooms, big yard, completely different environment. We could be there by Christmas." Catherine stared at him, a cold realization washing over her. "You found a listing? Today? That's quite a coincidence, considering we just talked about this yesterday." Something shifted in Robert's expression, so quickly she almost missed it. "I've been looking online for a while now, just exploring options. I didn't want to get your hopes up unless I found something special." The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly that Catherine wondered how many others she had missed over the years. How long had he been planning their escape from Cedar Falls? And why was he so desperate to leave now, just one day after she had discovered the tape? "The timing seems strange," Catherine said carefully. "Why the sudden urgency?" Robert's hand tightened slightly on hers. "It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for months. We can't live in that house forever, Catherine. We can't keep Sam's room like a shrine indefinitely. It's not healthy." "Sam's room stays exactly as it is," Catherine said firmly, pulling her hand away. "I won't discuss moving, and I won't discuss changing anything about her space." For just a moment Robert's mask slipped. Catherine saw frustration flash across his features, followed by something darker. Then the gentle, grieving husband returned, but she had seen enough. "Of course," Robert said softly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. I just want what's best for us." The waiter arrived to take their order, and Catherine used the interruptions to compose herself. When they were alone again, she decided to test her husband's honesty. "I ran into Mrs. Henderson today," she lied smoothly. "She mentioned you handled her insurance claim last week. Said you were very thorough." Robert nodded, absently. "Mrs. Henderson?" "Yes, Complicated case. Took most of the afternoon. Catherine's heart sank. There was no Mrs. Henderson. She had made up the name to see if Robert would correct her or play along with the deception. He had chosen to lie, creating details about a client who didn't exist. Must have been exhausting, Catherine continued, watching his face carefully. She said you seemed distracted, like you had something else on your mind. Did she? Robert's voice remained steady, but Catherine noticed his jaw tighten slightly. I suppose I've been preoccupied lately. This move, thinking about our future. Sometimes it's hard to focus on work. Another lie. Catherine realized she was sitting across from a stranger wearing her husband's face. How long had Robert been deceiving? Her? Had their entire marriage been built on deception, or had something changed after Sam's disappearance? As their meals arrived, Catherine found herself unable to eat. She pushed pasta around her plate while Robert ate with apparent appetite, making small talk about his day, his co-workers, his plans for the weekend. All of it felt rehearsed, performed for her benefit. You're not eating, Robert observed. Are you feeling all right? Catherine looked up at him, this man she had loved and trusted for 15 years, and realized she was completely alone. If Robert was involved in Sam's disappearance, then she had been living with her daughter's kidnapper. For 9 years. The thought made her physically ill. I think I'm coming down with something, she said, which was true in its own way. Maybe we should go home. Robert's eyes brightened with what looked like relief. Of course. Let me get the check. As they drove home through the quiet streets of Cedar Falls, Catherine stared out the passenger window and wondered if she would survive the night. That night, Catherine lay rigid in bed beside Robert, listening to his breathing gradually deepen into sleep. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, to get out of the house and away from the man who might have orchestrated their daughter's disappearance. But where could she go? And more importantly, if she fled now, would she ever find the truth about what happened to Sam? Around midnight, when she was certain Robert was deeply asleep, Catherine slipped quietly from the bed and padded barefoot to the kitchen. She needed to call Detective Williams to share her growing certainty that her husband was involved. But as she reached for the phone, it rang. The sudden sound in the silent house made her jump, her heart hammering against her ribs. Who would call at this hour? Catherine glanced toward the stairs, but Robert's snoring continued undisturbed. She answered on the third ring, her voice barely a whisper. Hello? Catherine Rivers? The voice was unfamiliar, male with a slight accent she couldn't place. Who is this? Do you know what time it is? I know about the tape, the caller said, and Catherine's blood turned to ice. I know you found it today. I know you went to the police. Catherine's grip tightened on the phone. Who are you? What do you want? I want to help you find your daughter. But you need to listen very carefully, Mrs. Rivers. Your husband isn't who you think he is. I don't understand. Robert didn't just know about Sam's kidnapping, the voice continued, each word hitting Catherine like a physical blow. He arranged it. He paid for it. And he's been watching you for 9 years, making sure you never got too close to the truth. Catherine sank into a kitchen chair, her legs no longer able to support her. That's impossible. Why would he do that? Sam was his daughter, too. Was she? The question hung in the air like poison. Mrs. Rivers, have you ever wondered why Sam looked nothing like her father? Why she had your dark hair and eyes, but none of Robert's features? The implication hit Catherine like a sledgehammer. You're lying. You're sick and you're lying. The man who called himself Robert Rivers isn't Sam's biological father. He's been playing a role for over 15 years, Mrs. Rivers. And when Sam started asking questions about why she didn't look like Daddy, when she started getting old enough to notice things, to remember faces, he decided she had become a liability. Catherine couldn't breathe. The kitchen spun around her as memories crashed together in her mind. Sam's questions about family resemblance, Robert's strange absences during Catherine's pregnancy, the way he had never quite bonded with Sam the way other Fathers bonded with their children. "Meet me tomorrow," the voice said. "Cedar Falls Park, by the duck pond, 2 o'clock. Come alone, and I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you where your daughter is." "Wait," Catherine started, but the line went dead. She sat in the dark kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear, trying to process what she had just heard. Upstairs, Robert's snoring had stopped. The house was completely silent, and Catherine realized with growing terror that she had no idea how long he had been awake, or whether he had heard her side of the conversation. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, slow, deliberate footsteps coming down toward the kitchen. Catherine quickly hung up the phone and tried to look casual, but her hands were shaking so violently she could barely control them. "Catherine?" Robert's voice called softly. "Is everything okay? I thought I heard you talking to someone." Robert appeared in the kitchen doorway, his silhouette backlit by the hallway light. Catherine could see he was fully dressed, not in pajamas as she would have expected. How long had he been awake? How much had he heard? "I couldn't sleep," Catherine said, her voice sounding strangely high to her own ears. "Thought I'd make some tea." Robert stepped into the kitchen, and Catherine noticed he was wearing the same clothes from dinner. He hadn't gone to bed at all. "The phone rang," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes watching her carefully. "I heard you talking to someone." "Wrong number," Catherine lied, backing toward the counter. "Some drunk person looking for a taxi company." Robert moved closer, and Catherine realized with growing alarm that he was blocking her path to both the back door and the hallway. "That's strange. It sounded like a longer conversation than that." "I was trying to help them find the right number," Catherine said, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. "You know how I am. I can't just hang up on people." Robert nodded slowly, but his expression remained unreadable. "Catherine, are you sure you're telling me the truth? Because it sounded like you said, 'Who are you?' That's an odd thing to say to someone calling for a taxi." The question hung between them in the dark kitchen. Catherine realized that the charade was over. Robert knew she was lying, and from the way he was positioning himself, he had no intention of letting her leave this room until he got answers. "I don't know what you think you heard," Catherine said, trying to edge toward the back door. "But I'm tired and I want to go back to bed." "I think we need to talk," Robert said, his voice taking on a tone she had never heard before. Cold. Calculating. "I think you found something today that you shouldn't have found." Catherine's blood froze. He knew about the tape. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The stuffed rabbit, Catherine." "Patches. You found what was hidden inside, didn't you?" There was no point in pretending anymore. Robert's mask had completely fallen away, revealing a stranger wearing her husband's face. "Yes," Catherine whispered. "I found the tape." Robert sighed heavily, as if he was disappointed but not surprised. "I was hoping you would just let sleeping dogs lie. After 9 years, I thought you had finally accepted that Sam was gone." "You know what happened to her?" Catherine said. "No." Longer a question, but a statement. "You know because you were involved." "I know because I arranged it," Robert said simply, his admission hitting Catherine like a physical blow. "Sam was becoming a problem. Too observant, too curious, asking too many questions about why she didn't look like me." Catherine stared at the man she had loved for 15 years, seeing him clearly for the first time. "Because you're not her father." Robert smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Very good, Catherine. You always were smarter than I gave you credit for. No, I'm not Sam's father. I'm not even Robert Rivers. That man died in a car accident 13 years ago, and I simply stepped into his life." "Who are you?" Catherine whispered, backing further toward the counter. "Someone who needed a new identity and found the perfect opportunity in a grieving widow with a young daughter," he said, moving closer. "You made it so easy, Catherine. You were so desperate for help raising Sam, so grateful for any man willing to take on another man's child." Catherine's hand found the knife block on the counter behind her. "What did you do with my daughter?" "What I had to do," Robert said, his voice devoid of emotion. "She was sold to people who could give her a new life, far from here. People who appreciated her unique qualities." The words struck Catherine like lightning. Sold. Her 7-year-old daughter had been sold like property to strangers who appreciated her unique qualities. The implication made her physically sick. "You're a monster," Catherine said, her fingers closing around the handle of a kitchen knife. "I'm a survivor," Robert corrected. "And unfortunately for you, Catherine, you now know too much to let you survive this conversation." As Robert lunged toward her, Catherine pulled the knife from the block, her maternal instincts finally overriding 9 years of misplaced trust. Robert's hand shot out to grab Catherine's wrist as she raised the knife, his fingers clamping down. With brutal force. She had forgotten how strong he was, how his construction background had left him with hands that could crush bone. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said through gritted teeth, twisting her wrist until pain shot up her arm. "I can make it quick, Catherine. Peaceful. Like you just couldn't handle the grief anymore." Catherine fought back with the desperation of a mother who had lost everything. She brought her knee up hard, catching Robert in the stomach and causing him to grunt and loosen his grip. The knife clattered to the floor as she broke free and ran for the back door. Her fingers fumbled with the deadbolt, but Robert was already behind her, his arm wrapping around her throat in a chokehold that cut off her air supply. Stars exploded behind her eyes as she clawed at his arm, fighting for consciousness. 9 years, Robert whispered in her ear, his breath hot against her neck. 9 years I kept you safe, kept you from asking the wrong questions. I even grew to care about you, Catherine. But you just couldn't leave well enough alone." Catherine's vision began to fade, but her hand found it, the cordless phone on the counter beside the door. With her last ounce of strength, she swung it backward, connecting hard with Robert's temple. His grip loosened just enough for her to break free and stumble toward the living room. "Help!" she screamed, hoping Mr. Peterson or any of the neighbors might hear. "Somebody help me!" Robert tackled her from behind, sending them both crashing into the coffee table. Glass shattered around them as the ceramic lamp Sam had made in second-grade art class exploded against the hardwood floor. "Nobody's going to help you," Robert snarled, pinning her down with his weight. "Just like nobody helped Sam when she cried for you every night for the first month." The cruelty of his words gave Catherine strength she didn't know she possessed. She grabbed a shard of broken ceramic and slashed at Robert's face, opening a gash along his cheek that immediately began to bleed. Robert howled and rolled away, giving Catherine the opening she needed. She scrambled to her feet and ran for the front door, her bare feet sliding on the hardwood as she heard Robert behind her, cursing and giving chase. The front door was locked with 3 different deadbolts, security measures Robert had insisted on installing after Sam's disappearance. Now Catherine realized they had never been meant to keep intruders out, but to keep her trapped inside. Her shaking fingers worked frantically at the locks, while Robert's footsteps grew closer. The first lock turned. The second. As she reached for the third, Robert's hand slammed against the door beside her head. "There's nowhere to run, Catherine," he said, blood dripping from his wounded face. "And even if you get out, who's going to believe you? I'm the grieving husband. You're the unstable mother who finally snapped." Catherine turned to face him, her back against the door. "The police will believe me. I gave them the tape. They know about the kidnapping." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Robert's features. "You're lying. Detective Williams has the recording. She's investigating everyone who had access to our house. It's over, Robert. Whatever your real name is, it's over." Robert's expression shifted from uncertainty to rage. "Then I guess I have nothing left to lose." As he lunged toward her one final time, Catherine heard the sound she had been praying for. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. The sirens grew, louder as red and blue lights flashed through the living room windows. Robert froze mid-lunge, his face twisting with the realization that his carefully constructed life was crumbling around him. "You called them before I came downstairs," he said, backing away from Catherine as the police cars screeched to a halt outside. "The phone call wasn't wrong number. You set this up." "No," Catherine gasped, still pressed against the door. "But someone wanted me to know the truth about you." Heavy footsteps pounded up the front steps, followed by authoritative pounding on the door. "Police! Open up!" Robert's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. "This isn't over, Catherine. Even if they arrest me, you'll never find her. Sam could be anywhere by now. She could be dead for all you know. Cedar Falls Police, we have a warrant." The front door exploded inward as officers burst through with a battering ram. Detective Williams led the charge, her weapon drawn and trained on Robert. "Step away from Mrs. Rivers, now!" Robert raised his hands slowly, his face returning to the mask of the grieving husband. "Officers, thank God you're here. My wife has had some kind of breakdown. She attacked me with a knife." Detective Williams' eyes took in the scene. Catherine's torn clothing, the blood on Robert's face, the broken glass scattered across the floor. "Mrs. Rivers, are you injured?" "He confessed," Catherine said, her voice hoarse from Robert's chokehold. "He confessed to everything. He's not even Robert Rivers. He stole that identity." "She's delusional," Robert said smoothly. "She's been getting worse since our daughter's disappearance. I've been trying to get her help, but she refuses treatment." Detective Williams stepped closer to Robert, never lowering her weapon. "Sir, we need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. My wife tried to kill me because she can't accept that our daughter is gone." "We know about the tape, Mr. Rivers," Detective Williams said. "Or should I say, Mr. Marcus Webb?" Robert's face went white. The name hit him like a physical blow, and Catherine saw his careful composure finally crack completely. "That's right," Detective Williams continued. "We ran the voice on the recording through our database. Marcus Webb, wanted for child trafficking in 3 states. The real Robert Rivers died in a car accident in 1989, but you've been living his life ever since." Robert's shoulders sagged in defeat. "How did you find out so fast?" "We didn't," Detective Williams admitted, as officers moved in to handcuff him. "But we got a call an hour ago from someone who claims to know where Samantha Rivers is being held. Someone who said he's been watching you for 9 years, waiting for the right moment to take you down." Catherine's heart stopped. "What? Who called you?" Detective Williams looked at her seriously. "He said his name was Thomas Rivers, Sam's biological father. He said he faked his death to escape the same people who were after him, but he's been tracking down the trafficking ring that took his daughter." The room spun around Catherine as the pieces fell into place. Thomas, her first husband, Sam's real father. The man she thought had died in Afghanistan. He was alive, and he had been hunting for their daughter all these years. "Where is she?" Catherine whispered, barely able to form the words. "Where is my Sam?" Detective Williams holstered her weapon as the officers led Robert away. "He's going to take us to her tonight, Mrs. Rivers. After 9 years, your daughter is coming home." As Robert was pushed past her toward the door, he leaned close enough to whisper one final cruelty. "She won't remember you, Catherine. She's not the same little girl you lost. What they did to her, what they turned her into, you'll wish she had died that night." But Catherine no longer cared what Robert said. Her daughter was alive, and that was all that mattered. The warehouse sat on the outskirts of Portland, a 3-hour drive that felt like a lifetime to Catherine as she rode in the back of Detective Williams' police car. Thomas had called again with the location, his voice shaking as he explained that he had been watching the trafficking operation for months, waiting for the right moment to strike without endangering the children inside. "There are 12 kids in there," Detective Williams said as they pulled up to the staging area where federal agents had assembled. "Sam is the oldest. She's been there the longest." Catherine's hands trembled as she watched the tactical team prepare for the raid. 16 years old now. Her little girl had grown up in captivity, and Catherine had missed every birthday, every milestone, every moment that mattered. "Mrs. Rivers," a gentle voice said behind her. Catherine turned and saw a man approaching, his face familiar despite the years and scars that marked his features. Thomas, her first husband, Sam's father, the love she thought she had lost forever. "Thomas," she whispered, and despite everything that had happened, despite the 9 years of believing he was dead, she felt a flood of complex emotions. Relief, anger, grief, hope. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry. I let you think I was dead. I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect either of you from him. I'm sorry it took me so long to find her." Catherine studied his face, seeing the toll the years had taken. "Why? Why did you let us believe you were gone?" "Because they would have killed you both if they knew I was alive," Thomas said. "The trafficking ring I was investigating in Afghanistan, they had connections here. When I discovered the threat to our family, I had to choose between coming home and keeping you safe. I chose wrong." Before Catherine could respond, the tactical team leader approached them. "We're moving in now. The building is surrounded. We'll have your daughter out within the hour." The next hour passed in a blur of radio chatter, shouted commands, and Catherine's heart hammering against her ribs. Then, finally, the call came through. "All children secured. Suspects in custody. We need medical teams standing by." Catherine ran toward the warehouse, Detective Williams and Thomas close behind her. A line of children emerged, escorted by federal agents, their faces pale and frightened but alive. And there, at the end of the line, walking slowly but steadily, was a young woman with Catherine's dark hair and Thomas's brown eyes. Sam was 16 now, no longer the 7-year-old who had disappeared from her bedroom. But Catherine recognized her daughter's face immediately, the same determined set to her jaw, the same intelligent eyes that had always seen too much. "Sam!" Catherine called out, her voice breaking. The young woman looked up, confusion flickering across her features. She had been told for 9 years that her parents were dead, that she had no family, that no one was looking for her. But as Catherine approached, something shifted in Sam's expression. Recognition, memory, hope. "Mom?" Sam's voice was hesitant, afraid to believe. Catherine reached her daughter and pulled her into her arms for the first time in 9 years. Sam was taller now, almost as tall as Catherine herself, but she melted into her mother's embrace like the little girl she had once been. "I never stopped looking for you," Catherine whispered into Sam's hair. "Not for one single day." Thomas approached slowly, his eyes wet with tears. "Hello, baby girl," he said softly. Sam looked up at him, studying his face with the same intensity she had inherited from him. "Daddy? But they said you were dead. They said both of you were dead." "They lied about everything," Thomas said, reaching out to touch his daughter's face. "But we're here now. We're all here now. And we're never going to let anyone hurt you again." As police cars drove away with Marcus Webb and his accomplices, as medical teams checked over the rescued children, as federal agents processed the crime scene, the Rivers family stood together under the Oregon night sky. They had all been changed. By the years apart, scarred by loss and trauma, and the terrible things people could do to each other. But they were together. After 9 years of searching, after 16 years of lies and manipulation, Samantha Rivers was finally coming home. The healing would take time. There would be therapy and questions and difficult conversations about the years they had lost. But for now, it was enough to hold each other and know that love had survived even the darkest circumstances. Some families are broken by tragedy. Others discover that love is stronger than any force that tries to tear them apart.